of Matthew 5:13 through 16. You are the salt and you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven.
So I know we're now a few days into the new school year, and hopefully everybody's kind of settled into some kind of routine that's sustainable. I was thinking about this. I know how it is at my house, and probably is at your house too if you're involved in school in any way. Those first few days can be really overwhelming. It's like you've got so much being thrown at you that it sometimes feels like you're drowning. So I was kind of having flashbacks. I had this one particular class in seminary, and it was with a professor who was kind of famous, like in theological circles, or at least as famous as somebody can be, like when you're in that world. And I'll never forget the first class period. He stood up and he was going through the syllabus, and he was explaining how our grade was going to work in the class. And he said it's going to be kind of a 50-50 split. You've got a 50-page paper that you're expected to write throughout the semester. And then at the end of the semester, you'll have a final exam, and that will be the other 50% of your grade. And then from there, he went on to explain how the reading schedule was going to work for the class. And this was kind of an upper-level class towards the end. And he said, there are 18 books that you have to read, 16 of which had been written by him, which is like a brilliant business model when you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like if I ever teach a class on anything, I'm going to make people buy everything I ever wrote, even if it's like a newsletter article that has nothing to do with what, I guess that's kind of what he did. Everything that Scott ever produced, we were expected to purchase and then to digest. I walked away thinking like, that's a lot. And it was a lot. And for most of the semester, it was like information overload. You just walked out there, you're just like, I just hope I can somehow survive this. And then towards the end of the semester, as everybody's attention turned toward that final exam, he did something that he'd never done up to that point. Most of the time he came in, he would start his lecture as soon as the bell rang, and he would go all the way to the end, and there was no like personal interaction at all. But on this particular day, he ended early, and he asked if anybody in the class had any questions. And everybody was kind of looking around because he'd never done that before. And finally, one guy raised his hand, and everybody's kind of looking at him. And he asked the question that everybody else was thinking, right? Normally that's how it works. And so the professor called him. He said, can you tell us what's going to be covered on the final? And everybody's like, yeah, this is a good question. But we've read all these pages. We've listened to all these lectures. What is it? And I'll never forget the guy's answer. He paused for a minute. He looked at him. He said, if you have to ask the question, you're certainly unprepared for the answer. Don't you hate people like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember Wayne Smith used to say at South, and he said, if the Lord ever changes the rules about hating people, like I've got my guy picked out. And that's kind of the way I felt. And it sounds like some of you got your guy picked out too. As soon as the professor answered the question, like the air went out of the room, nobody else raised their hand, and that was it. Now, if you have your Bible, I want you to turn to Matthew 25 this week. We're in week 2 of a series that we're calling Love Your Neighbor. And today we're going to look at a story that Jesus told 3 days before the crucifixion. It is a hard to understand story. It's kind of a shocking story that makes a haunting point. And it comes towards the end. Jesus has been preparing his disciples for these moments that are about to come. And in Matthew 24, his disciples ask him, what's going to happen when the world ends? They're asking about like the final exam. And so you get to Matthew 25, Jesus tells 3 stories in a row that all essentially make the same point, but it's the last story that we're going to look at today. It's a story about some sheep and some goats and how this is all going to play out. But I want to warn you as we dig into this, even though like the disciples asked the question, you may find out at some point that you're not prepared for the answer. Like this is one of those passages you read this and you're like, I'm not sure how I'm doing when it comes to this. And really, that's the point. So if you found Matthew 25, we're going to start in verse 31. Here's what Jesus said. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him. And then check out this part. He will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Now, I've got a picture I want to show you. Because sheep and goats were like the same size and because they pretty much eat the same diet, in the ancient world, the shepherds would often put the sheep and the goats together during the day. In fact, it was common if you had a lot of different herds in one area that all the shepherds would put theirs together in like this central location, and they would spend all day together. It was a way to cut down on labor costs. It was a way to take care of the land. And so all day, these sheep and these goats would be together, and then when the evening came, the shepherds would come through, and they would separate the herds back out, and they would go to their respective pens. And so make sure you don't miss this. Jesus says that's what it's going to be like when the world ends. Like, even though we all spend our time together now, and even though we all kind of look alike, at least from a distance, and even though we all kind of eat the same diet, eventually, when the evening comes, there's going to be this separation. And some people are going to be welcomed into God's presence to enjoy their inheritance throughout eternity. Other people are going to be banished from God's presence. They're going to enter into eternal punishment. And I know that's like uncomfortable to hear, and a lot of us have like spent our lives pretending as if that's not how it works. But Jesus said this is this unavoidable thing. That's why it says that all the nations will be gathered before him. That means there's nowhere that you can go. Like there's nothing you can do to avoid this. Every single person is either going to be welcomed into their eternal inheritance or they're going to be banished from God's presence and they're going to enter into eternal punishment. But here's the thing. Most of you all already knew that. Like when you came in this morning, you already knew about Judgment Day. So while it's kind of haunting, it's not really shocking because you've spent most of your life hearing about it. It's what Jesus says next that's so shocking. Verse 34. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Now, in the passage that Harper just read, Matthew 5, it ends with Jesus saying this. He says, "In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So as followers of Jesus, we know we're supposed to do good deeds. We know we're supposed to do things for other people that honor God and hopefully point people to Jesus. There's really no debate about that. But then when you get to Matthew 25, if you just read it like at face value, it almost seems to indicate that it's our doing of good deeds, or maybe our lack of doing good deeds, that determines where we spend eternity. And as soon as you read that, like if you grew up in church, that brings up a lot of questions, right? Because you know, if salvation is by grace, if salvation is a gift of God, then how can it have anything to do with whether or not we feed the hungry and give water to the thirsty and visit the sick and visit those in prison. I mean, if salvation is dependent upon what Jesus did on the cross, then how can it be dependent on what I do or don't do? And the answer is that it's not. The Bible makes it abundantly clear that your salvation is a gift from God. There's nothing you can do to earn it. All you can do is accept it. So don't mess that up. A lot of people read this story and they draw the wrong conclusion. And the reason you know that's the wrong conclusion is because of what Jesus says next. Verse 32, here it is. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. This is so cool. So the king in this story, who represents God the Father, he looks at these people who have done all these good things, and he says, you fed the hungry, and you clothed the naked, and you visited sick people, and you hung out with people in prison. And the cool thing is, they don't even remember doing it. That's why they say, like, when did we do all these things? And Jesus says to them, like, you did them, but you don't remember doing them because your heart had been so transformed by your relationship with me that these are the kinds of things that just came naturally to you. It's not like they didn't do what a lot of people in our world do. They didn't sit down and like make a list of all these good things, thinking that if they just did enough good things, it would tilt the scales of judgment like in their favor. If I could somehow feed enough hungry people and clothe enough naked people, then surely that will outweigh all the bad stuff I've done. That's not what they did. Instead, because their hearts had already been transformed by Jesus, they started doing these things as a natural expression of gratitude for what God had done for them. So rather than doing a bunch of stuff in hopes of earning salvation, they did a bunch of stuff because they'd experienced salvation. That's two different things. This is not a prescription for what you have to do to try to earn grace, and rather, this is a description of what you do after you've had an experience of grace. You become the type of person who spends their time like feeding hungry people, giving water to thirsty people, visiting sick people, visiting people in prison, and providing clothing for people who need clothes. It's not something they did for salvation. It's something they did because of their salvation. There's something else here, though, that I want to make sure you catch, because this seems to be a problem in the world that we live in. They did not do these things to earn salvation. They also did not do these things so that somebody could take a picture of them doing them, post them on Instagram with the hashtag kindness, and then start collecting likes and hopefully getting some new followers. Now, you know what I'm talking about, because some of you have probably done that, and you see an example of this. Every time there's a natural disaster, what happens? There's some celebrity, there's some like political leader, and they show up on the scene, and they're going to hand out bottled waters, and they're going to hand out, paper towels and all that kind of stuff. And as they're doing that, they just so happen to have a film crew with them who's taking all this in, and they're going to create these clips later that they hope will go viral so that everybody will say, boy, isn't that a great person? Researchers call that performance altruism. And it's hard not to be cynical about some of that. But that is not what the people in this story are doing. They didn't do these things in hopes of earning something. They didn't do it to earn attention. They didn't do it to earn salvation. They did them because their hearts had been so transformed by their relationship with Jesus that these are the kinds of things that came most natural to them. So here's the big idea for the message today. It's that saved people serve people. Make sure you get that. It's not that you serve people in order to be saved. It's that once you're saved, you become the type of person who serves other people. And if you're a person who really likes to dig into Scripture and read what other people have said about this, then you know there's a debate around this passage. It's been going on for hundreds of years, and it's around verse 40 where Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." It's that phrase, "these brothers and sisters of mine," that has sort of caused all space. So there's some people that say that because Matthew was written to a Jewish audience and because Jesus was speaking to Jewish people, that he's only referencing other Jewish people. There's other people who say that because he's talking to his disciples, that he's telling them that their primary job is to help other people who are also following Jesus. And if you read their arguments, they make a compelling case. But then there's all these other places of Scripture, and this is what we don't like. There's all these other places where Jesus seems to indicate that you're supposed to help anybody that needs it. Like there's really no limit to this. Luke chapter 6, for example, Jesus said this. He said, "But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, pray for those who mistreat you." And then he goes on and he explains exactly how this works. He says, if they slap you, turn the other cheek. If they ask for your coat, give them your coat, and then give them your shirt too. In fact, Jesus over and over again throughout the New Testament says, if you're a follower of his, you don't limit who you help and who you serve. Instead, you're supposed to serve everybody, even the people that don't like you and who say bad things about you and who may even do bad things to you. I want to show you something. Last week after the sermon, go to the next one. Tim Ogle sent me this. This is a meme that was on. We talk about the Good Samaritan. So you see Jesus, and he says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." And the lawyer stands up and says, "Who's my neighbor?" And then Jesus said, "It's whoever you were hoping I wouldn't say." And that's kind of how it is. Here's a note that I put in your outline that help you make sense of some of this. As human beings, we're all the time trying to shrink the circle while Jesus keeps expanding it. We want to know, who is it we're supposed to help? Is it just the people like us? Is it just the people we like? Is it just other Christians or other believers? No, it's everybody. And that's the challenge of all this. If Jesus had said, love the people that you love, we'd be like, yeah, no problem. If Jesus had said, help the people that help you, no problem. Help the people that are in your inner circle. Make sure they've got food and water and clothing. No problem, Jesus, sign me up. But that's not what he said. Instead, he said that we're supposed to serve anybody that needs help. And then just to make sure we don't miss the point, because he knows that we often do, he gives us some specific examples of the types of people that often need help. And what you're going to discover as we go through this is that the people that Jesus mentions specifically are just like the people that live in your neighborhood and live in my neighborhood. So if you're keeping track, here's the first group of people. Jesus says we're to help the disadvantaged. He says, verse 35, "I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I needed clothes, and you clothed me." He's describing people who, for whatever reason, and much of it may even be their fault, but for whatever reason, they struggle to secure the basic necessities. Food, clothing, the water's been shut off, the closet is empty, maybe the lights are getting ready to be turned off, the refrigerator's bare. These are the people who struggle to survive day to day. Now, that's different than a lot of us. A lot of us, we go to sleep, and what are we worried about? We think, I have got to figure out a way to stop spending so much money. But for these folks, it's a different deal. They're not worried about spending, they're worried about surviving. And if you think these people like don't exist in our community, then go talk to somebody that works at a public school, and they'll tell you. So what are we supposed to do about that? The truth is, and I said this earlier, the truth is that a lot of us have worked really hard to insulate ourselves from all this. We like to pretend as if that doesn't exist or it doesn't affect us because it's not us. We're just like the religious guy in the story from last weekend. We might see these people from a distance, but we like to pass by on the other side of the road. And Jesus said that's not what you do. He said you're supposed to get involved with people who are disadvantaged and do what you can to help provide for their basic needs. The second group of people he mentions are the disconnected. Verse 35 says, I was a stranger and you invited me in. The word stranger in Greek literally means someone who feels like they don't have a share in something. So it's not just somebody you don't know, it's somebody that's not a part of the group. It's somebody who doesn't feel like they're a part of whatever it is that's happening around them. That can happen in almost any environment. They're the people who feel like they're on the outside and they've never yet been invited inside. And one of the things I love about this verse is that you could take out the word stranger and you could replace it with almost any category of person and it would still fit, like you would still get what Jesus was trying to say. For example, you could say, I was a single mom struggling to make ends meet, and you helped me. I was an immigrant who didn't speak English, and you invited me in. I was a recovering addict who burned all his bridges, and you helped me rebuild my life. I was a lonely older person whose kids had moved away and never came back, and you stopped by to visit me. I was a neglected kid whose parents weren't interested. And you coached my team, and you taught my class. I was new to town. I didn't really know anybody, and I couldn't find a way to break in. But then for whatever reason, like you showed up and you invited me to something and you introduced me to some people, and you start to see how this is supposed to work. Like we're surrounded by people who may not necessarily be strangers. It's not that we don't know their name. It's just that they don't feel like they have a share in anything. They don't feel like they're a part of anything. And so part of what we do as followers of Jesus is we keep expanding the circle. We don't limit it. We keep expanding it. And we invite people to become a part of whatever it is that's happening around us. And I don't know what this looks like for you, but I do know that Jesus said that if your heart has been transformed, these are the kinds of things that you'll do. Lastly, he talks about the desperate. So he says, I was sick. You came to visit me. I was in prison. And you visited. And the way I'll read this again, these are just broad categories that describe anybody who finds themselves in a desperate situation. There's really no limit. So it's sick people, imprisoned people, people who are terminally ill, people who deal with chronic pain, heartbroken people, addicted people, people who are mentally ill, depressed people, people with PTSD, people drowning in debt, people looking for work, people who've lost somebody they love, people whose entire life is kind of crumbled around them and they realize I don't have a plan B and I don't know where to go. I mean, he's talking about anybody that feels like they're drowning and doesn't know what to do. And Jesus said, if you've had an experience with me, those are the kind of people you'll look for. Those are the kind of people that you'll engage with. And one of the things I love about this story, if you go back and you read this closely, it's amazing. Here's these people, and Jesus said, hey, you did all these cool things. And none of what they did was all that spectacular. I mean, it's not like Jesus did not say, congratulations, you guys cured cancer and solved world hunger. Yeah, it's not that. Instead, they just did a bunch of super simple stuff that made an immediate impact on people who needed it really bad. So they gave food to hungry people and they gave water to thirsty people, and they clothed people who needed clothing, and they visited sick people, and they visited people in prison. Like if you were to do those same things and somebody took a picture of you doing them and posted on social, like it probably wouldn't go viral, might not even get that many likes. And yet Jesus said, those are the kinds of things you do. I love the way Haddon Robinson, the great preacher, said this. He said, this passage seems to indicate that the basis of judgment isn't about the big, grand moments, but about the love and generosity that's demonstrated in the forgettable, unremarkable moments to the overlooked and unnoticed people. Like here, these people, they said, gosh, I don't even remember doing that. It's like it just came so natural to them that it just became the natural outflow of who they were. Nothing big, nothing remarkable, often forgettable. But over time, they had a huge impact. I've got another picture I want to show you. This is a guy named Aristides. He was a Greek philosopher. He became known as Aristides the Athenian. Sounds like a boxer, doesn't it? Maybe a professional wrestler. Aristides the Athenian. He was not a believer in the first part of his life, but as he near middle age, he became a believer in Jesus. And the reason he started to believe is because of what he saw the people who already believed do on a daily basis. So he wrote about this. This is from 125 AD. So the language is a little bit dated, but I want you to listen to the way he described it. He said, they walk in all humility and kindness, and falsehood is not found among them, and they love one another. They despise not the widow, and grieve not the orphan. He that hast distributeth liberally to him that hath not. If they see a stranger, they bring him under their roof, and rejoice over him as if he were their own brother. For they call themselves brethren, not after the flesh, but after the Spirit of God. But when one of their poor passes away from the world, and any of them see him, he provides for his burial according to his ability. And if they hear that any of their number is imprisoned or oppressed for the name of their Messiah, all of them provide for his needs. Now don't miss this part. He said, and if there is among them a man that is needy and poor, and they have not an abundance of necessaries, they fast 2 or 3 days so that they may supply the needy with their necessary food. For Aristides, it's like he saw all these saved people serving people, and he couldn't help but want to be a part of it. Now, what about you? What about us? Here's what I know is true. Most of us are not taking this seriously enough. Like if you ever had a professor or a teacher that chose to give you a sneak preview about what was going to be on the final, the understanding was like you would work at that a little extra harder. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going to prepare for that. Most of us, we don't do this. Like even though Jesus said, hey, when it's all said and done, this is going to be on the final, most of us are content to sort of live comfortable lives, sort of isolate ourselves in this, hope that this doesn't affect us. And so Jesus comes along and says, I just want to remind you, like you asked me about the end, and here's what it looks like. And oh, by the way, this is a big part of it. Like this is a big deal. And there's a lot of different reasons we don't do this. One of the reasons is, and I know this is true for you because it's true for me, is that this can be overwhelming. Like you look and there's so many people that need help and there's so many needs that it can almost paralyze you. So if that's where you are, I just want to offer one approach that may be helpful as you think about this. And here it is. It's that you do for somebody what you wish you could do for everybody. You just do for somebody what you wish you could do for everybody, because we don't have the resources to help everybody. A lot of us have been content not to help anybody. But Jesus said that's the wrong way to do it. I know you can't like feed everybody, but you can feed somebody. Like you can't buy clothes for everybody. Nobody has that kind of money, but you can help one family or one kid with clothes. I know you can't like care for every sick person in your life, but you can care for somebody. And so Jesus said, I want you to do for somebody what you wish you could do for everybody, instead of not doing anything for anybody. And then just so you don't miss how serious this is, I want you to listen to how Jesus closes this. Verse 41. Here's what Jesus said. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Now check out this part. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for the one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. You know what scares me about this story? This is the haunting part. It's that just like the people who did it right didn't remember doing all those things, these other people, they didn't realize they hadn't been doing those things. Like Jesus goes through the list and they say like, well, gosh, when did we not do that? It's like their lives became so self-absorbed that they didn't realize they weren't doing anything for anybody. And they get to the end, and Jesus said, you missed it. Now here's my question. Which side are you on? Like, are you a sheep or a goat? As you look at how you spent your life, as you look at how you invest your money, as you look at how you treat the people who the society considers the least of these, the disadvantaged, the disconnected, and the desperate, which side of this are you on? And here's what I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you the same thing my professor told me. If you have to ask the question, you're certainly not prepared for the answer. Like if you don't know which side of this you're on, that's a pretty good indication. That's the bad news. The good news is that you can change that. You can get prepared. So with that in mind, I want you to stand. And one of the things I love about this story, just like we talked about last week, is there's lots of different ways to read these stories. And you get to this one in particular, and just like last week in the story of the Good Samaritan, one of the best ways of understanding this story is that the person that needed help was you. And like the reason that you're expected to help other people is because Jesus has already helped you. You're expected to do for others what he's done for you. 1 John 4:19 says, we love because he first loved us. This is not just a story about what we're supposed to do. It's a story about what he did for us. At one point in your life, apart from Christ, you were the one that was hungry. You were the one that was thirsty. You were the one that was unclothed. You were naked. You were the one in prison. You were the one that was sick. Your sin had been counted against you. Your guilt was proven. The sins had been passed. And then right at that moment, when you couldn't save yourself, Jesus showed up and did for you what you could have never done for yourself. He did for you what he wants to do for everybody. And so if you've never had an experience like that, if you've never experienced a salvation that comes from him, I want you to know you can. So we're going to sing these final two songs. If you need to pray with somebody, you need to talk to somebody, you're ready to join the team, you're ready to make a public decision to be baptized into Christ, to confess Christ as your Savior, I want you to meet me on this front row.